Have you ever looked completely fine when not knowing your purpose was taking up far more space inside than anyone knew? Not knowing your purpose becomes an inner struggle, especially when the outside world looks normal, but the private experience feels heavier. You know, throughout the day, a person might look normal. Nobody knows what's going on. Their siblings, they could joke around, they they work, they're our family members, sisters, brother, father, mother. They even go on date. They socialize. You will never know. But they're quietly wrestling with not knowing their purpose. So this happens differently based off the generation. As you know, Generation X, they are self-reliance. Millennia, they uh, like to achieve. They have a role pressure. And Gen Z, they're the ones that takes it into social media in a highly visible way. So there are different ways how we cope with these things. See, I'm catching up with the social media thing myself. But I want to ponder on the duality here because everything has two sides to the story, right? You got left, right. You go right because you went left. I mean, you go left because you went right. Or, top, bottom, black, white, whatever the case might be. Skinny, bigger. It doesn't matter, right? Accent, no accent. Not that I have one, of course. But the duality here is finding purpose versus living meaningfully. Oh, meaningfully. Did I say that right? I hope I did. What are we really trying to protect when I mean, when not knowing your purpose becomes private? If you don't know your purpose, who does? So, beneath not knowing your purpose, there may be a quieter question about living meaningfully. Perhaps meaning may be practiced in ordinary life before it is ever named as a calling. I just want to make sure in this approach, this community, in this channel, I'm simply sharing how I see these topics through my own lenses. Take what resonates, question what does not, and use your own judgment along the way. I would always introduce three different lenses. Ecclesiastes, for instance, paraphrasing here, chapter 3, verse 11 through 13, it talks about the meaning before understanding. The idea here is that it holds two ideas together. Human being seems wired to reach for something larger, yet we cannot fully grasp the whole pattern of life sometimes. The passage then turns towards something surprisingly ordinary, like doing good, eating, drinking, and finding satisfaction in one's work. This biblical lens for not knowing your purpose, it does not pretend that the uncertainty has to disappear first. This version, I'm describing someone whose life looks functional, while a private question keeps taking up space. What is that private question? Let's ponder on that. Questions such as, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Ecclesiastes allows that tension to remain. There can be a longing to understand the larger meaning of life while still participating meaningfully in the life directly in front of us. So that creates a shift in duality. Finding purpose versus living meaningfully. Maybe those are not the same thing, is it? Someone may not be able to name their great purpose and still love someone well. They could raise a child, help a neighbor, create something useful, do honest work, or be fully present for another person. The passage does not eliminate the search for meaning. It questions whether complete understanding is required before meaningful living can begin. I'd like you to ponder on this. What if part of the weight of not knowing our purpose comes from believing we're supposed to understand the whole story before we can value the chapter we are already living? Let's see it through another lens. The Bhagavad Gita 247. Action without outcome. In the Bhagavad Gita, the idea is that Krishna tells Arjuna that his responsibility is to action. While the results of that actions are not entirely his to process or control, this belongs to the Gita's largest treatment of disciplined action without attachment to its fruits. That's from the Holy Bhagavad Gita. So, if we really see that through that lens, it introduces a different question. Perhaps some of the anxiety around purpose comes from turning purpose into an outcome we have to discover or achieve. Now, we imagine things differently, obviously. The minute that I say something, you start imagining on your end, it already shifted, it already changes. So, my purpose might be different from yours, depending on the lens that we're using. Purpose such as, do we have the right career? Am I doing the things I was born to do? Well, not born, but born. B-O-R-N. So, will people remember my contribution? When would everything finally make sense? So then not knowing becomes threatening because it feels like falling behind. The Gita shifts attention from securing the final result toward how one participates in the action available now. That does not mean that the Gita teaches forget about purpose. Its settings involves duty, spiritual discipline, action, and liberation. Not modern career purpose anxiety, but as a lens, it raises a useful modern question. What is that? Well, what happens when we become so attached to discovering the meaning of our life that we stop inhabiting the life where meaning might actually develop? This connect to our generational statement earlier. Achievement, self-reliance, and public identity may look different across generations, but each can become a way of asking. Asking what? Am I doing life correctly? Am I okay? Are they okay? Because before you know, a lot of us seek answers with others, not realizing that others are also seeking answers. I'd like you to ponder on this. What if purpose becomes harder to recognize when we're constantly measuring whether our life has produced enough evidence that it matters? I like us to use a different lens from Carl Jung: individuation, becoming. The idea here through the lens of Carl Jung's concept of individuation describes an ongoing psychological process of becoming a more integrated person rather than simply identifying with the roles or expectations for that matter. An identity supplied by the outside world, things that we picked up along the way. Now, this is a Jungian psychological theory, not an established scientific law. Very well mined. I'm not a doctor, but I'm connected to my surrounding and I'm sharing with you. Through the lens of Jung, he gives you the strongest lens for the world hidden in your title. What is your title? The one that you have given yourself. A person can successfully perform the visible identities of life. You give your title as a worker. You might have the title as a parent, as a partner. You might have a title of a friend, a successful person, a responsible adult. And throughout those different titles, you might still probably wonder, but who am I underneath all of this? So that makes I don't know my purpose potentially more complicated than a career question. Sometimes the hidden fear may be, what if the title, what if the roles I've built my life around aren't the same thing as who I am? Things that make you go, What is particularly useful for your central, question or the main question, for lack of a better word? What are we really trying to protect when not knowing your purpose becomes private, becomes your own, becomes your inner world? Are you trying to protect a reputation, maybe? Maybe competence? Maybe the identity of being the person who has things figured out? Mhm. Maybe belonging. Maybe the fear that's saying, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. This could disturb the version of us everyone else already believes in. So through young lens, therefore, uh, we it moves things from how do I find my purpose and towards something more psychologically interesting, such as who is the person trying so desperately to have one? Or who is the persona? What title does it have? I'd like you to ponder on this. If we stop trying to explain what our life is supposed to become, what might we notice about the person we are already becoming? The one we want to become and the one becoming are two different things, and the one you are, present time. So I'd like to break it down for just a moment here. We talk about Ecclesiastes, uh, chapter 3, 11, 13. It talks about meaning. That is the lens that we're going to use. Bhagavad Gita 247 talks about action. Carl Jung, based on individuation, it talks about becoming. So as you can see, meaning, action, becoming. This progression, the three reference the different jobs rather than repeating the same message or the same thing. We're always good at looking for approval. Sometimes we spend more time looking for others to agree with us rather than see what it is that we are or what we are becoming. For instance, Ecclesiastes challenged the assumption that we must understand life completely before experiencing meaning. The Bhagavad Gita challenged attachment to obtaining a particular result from life. Jung turns the question inward and asks whether purpose might emerge through becoming more fully ourselves rather than discovering a predetermined label. So perhaps we want to ponder. If we are going to be honest, we're probably thinking already, what is my purpose? And the hope is that this moves you towards what if purpose isn't something I am failing to find? And perhaps it moves you towards something else. Let's ponder on this. What if meaning is already being formed through how I live, how I act, how I relate, and become even while I still don't know what to call it? How about that? The universe knows what to give you. How to give it to you. So when we look at it that way, we could explore purpose, fulfillment, identity, and awareness without turning the episode or turning this thing into a lesson or looking for a lesson on how to live. That's not my goal. My goal is to show you the different tensions, that there is different side, different lenses based on where you're at. I'm not an authority that's going to settle it. I'm just the one that could tell you that we all see different things, but we all human just the same. So This episode, as a matter of fact, every other episode talks about our humanity, the one thing that we have in common. I like to ponder on this. If nobody ever handed us a clear answer about what our purpose was, could we still recognize that our life had meaning? Sometimes we beat ourselves up for no reason, and we think that we are not doing enough. But the reality of it is, we are not late. We're just on time. We're still learning. So perhaps meaning grows through participation, not just revelation. When not knowing your purpose appears, perhaps the most revealing question is not what it says about us, about you, about them, but what we do with it next. Sometimes the private story is where the real conversation begins. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next one.